But actually, while we're on government people, I just wanted to sneak in there. I was going to talk about an NHS tech bug, another one which is really annoying. But Starma has announced yesterday that he's scrapping NHS England. So he's scrapping this whole... Does any of you know actually what NHS England is and what it does?
No.
A little
Kieran,
bit.
You stood for Parliament. You should.
I know a little bit about it, but not a lot. And the thing to know about the NHS is wildly complex. So I've spoken to some people who actually, this is actually their job and has been for 20 years. And their summary is, it's so complicated that nobody can understand it.
And we know people who work for NHS England, and myself, I've worked for the NHS, and our daughter Alice, a researcher here, has worked in the NHS, and it's a pile of dog shit, the whole thing, the whole kind of management, and particularly the computing. And that's why we're seeing yesterday Medfer faces scrutiny over unsecured API vulnerability endpoints. So you've got your website and you can have all of that protected, but underneath the website, getting into patient databases are what's called APIs, application program interfaces. And if you leave those open, you really don't bloody know what you're doing. They've, obviously this sort of, I don't know, Orwellian type answers from these CEOs of these sort of tech companies that are driving the NHS is, there's no evidence of data breaches. We can reassure them. There's, incident was reported to Information Commission officers, so no further action is going to be taken.
We're getting lots of flags. There is a graph that explains NHS England.
And it seems to be at the top in tiny print.
So
but
what does it do?
It's Labour is scrapping it, which distributes about 90%.
NHS England, Local Integrated Care Board. So it's not delivering primary care. It seems to be a layer of bureaucracy.
Essentially, it's the bureaucracy between the government.
This was reforms brought in by, I forget his name now, it's a Conservative Health Minister. And the logic was that people were a bit paranoid saying you're trying to privatise it through the back door. But the logic was there's too many political decisions made on the NHS, and so it bends the NHS in one way or direction depending on whatever the health minister thinks.
And so you go through a layer.
So you put in the NHS England where people are making decisions for the NHS. But of course what happened was...
an operational part. Yeah.
But then what happened was the government maintained its own people anyway, and then NHS had its own people, and then you end up with yet more signals.
Right. So we're removing a layer of bureaucracy. That must be good, Emily.
Well, what normally happens is when you've removed it, you realise, actually, what we need to do is have a layer between the political layer and the local health authorities that kind of pulls things together, takes an overarching view that isn't politicised.
I can't believe you believe this. This never works.
I think coordination, in government, it's always, what are you going to do instead? Just fire off loads of money to uncoordinated health authorities to just do whatever and have no idea what they're doing?
Local spending, nearer subsidiarity. I mean, I don't know. I think it's so crap that he's got to do something. It's so unwieldy.
It's kind of bold for this government. This government hasn't really been characterised by boldness.
That's partly what worries me. It's like the NHS is like the one thing everyone can agree on. It's complicated.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're going to scrap NHS England. Yeah. I mean, it's. You can argue for and against it, but wouldn't it have been nice to have had a much longer conversation about it?
Well, the 3 years they've given themselves to solve care.
Yeah.
Well, and
I think what we'll probably find is that NHS England pops up in exactly the same form with a different name and all the same staff soon.
Yeah, I'm very worried about these
consultancy fees rather than staff fees. Yeah.
I'm very worried about the transformations towards self-provision of AI to help with things like the NHS just ending up being sales to big cloud in America, and then NHS informatics becoming American informatics. So you can actually privatise the whole lot, make Silicon Valley richer and richer with this super smart NHS that's somewhere towards as good as EasyJet. I won't say it, but this leak on this API is just bad security.
If you are serious about the NHS in the theory of the NHS, you should make it stronger. And you don't make it stronger by outsourcing more and more and more outside of the core NHS. So you've got to go one way or another way. And we just keep jumping between the two. And the problem is we jump between the two every time there's a new government, and sometimes every time there's a new health minister. That's the biggest problem.
Thank you very much. We're nearly going into a depressing sinkhole because we talk about my old department that I love, the NHS. So let's cheer ourselves up. It's time for our Guilty Pleasure Online. Emily Taylor, you're up for Guilty Pleasure Online. Normally your guilty pleasures are all... what your words? Saccharine.
Boring.
Boring.
I've got another
All
one
right, here
for
we
you.
go. Yeah, here we go.
Okay, this is only guilty because I'm Irish Catholic stock, so everything in my life is framed from guilt. But actually, there's
even
no
pleasure
need.
is guilty.
Yeah, there's no. Especially pleasure is guilty. But I do like my maps, and I was just like on the way home yesterday. I know map apps, but they are amazing. They're amazing. We probably all remember before maps were on an app.
Yeah.
Where you had to read
Oh, that
maps.
thing you
I
unwrapped.
loved reading maps.
I
My
would be-
claim to my highest achievement ever was navigating from San Diego up to San Francisco when I was 12 through LA.
Not
Posh
bad.
girl.
That's
Posh
not
girl.
bad.
Get through LA can
That
be
is
a little
not
bit
bad,
hairy.
is it? But that was old school.
I remember
Now
the
you
thing where
just set your
you'd walk
destination.
behind, because you'd always
But
put the map in the bit in the back
Yeah.
behind you, so you'd be driving along going, Christ, where's
Well,
the
you
map?
have to fold
And
the
the
bloody
dog-eared thing, and
Yeah.
where are we? And then
And if you fold it
also
wrong, you
know
can't breathe. I mean, I
Some
have my sort of-
really good friends were driving through Rome back in the day in the 80s. Had a massive row.
Rome is a nightmare.
Screaming, car horns going everywhere. And they had such a huge row. She just grabbed the maps off him and threw them out of the window.
Anyway, we were
But how can they? I mean, it's just
we were driving
brilliant.
back from.
We were
It's
driving
called
back from-
AI.
Yeah, it's driving back from London, and I was like, how do they know within like 1 or 2 minutes when you're going to arrive?
This is
good,
the
yeah.
internet.
Because it's not
seriously.
just the traffic now;
Oh,
it's the
do
traffic
you know what I do?
as it will be.
Oh,
at
do you know what I
your
do is
de-
I
just
test it
can't
because it'll
get
tell
my
me
head
I'll
around it.
leave. I'll leave here to get back
This
home. And it'll tell
morning.
me I'll arrive at this amount of time. So I think, right, what if
Will
I go
I?
slower? What if I go really fast? Can I make it move? And you can,
Yeah,
but it's always so annoying in that it sort of moves by a minute. Every
Well, this is
15
this
minutes,
is-
and so
really
you don't
put
really
your
get the
foot down.
satisfaction of like I'm
No.
beating the system.
No.
It's too good.
We're not talking
Yeah.
about maps, though, are we? We're talking because Apple Maps is
Apple
shit.
Maps is rubbish.
Yeah,
Google
we're
Maps is
talking
better.
about Google Maps, which is crowdsourced data coming in from the point of source mixed with averages. So we're heading towards Oxford. Google knows Oxford's always shit, so let's add 5 minutes. And then they're seeing the traffic flows going into Oxford, so let's add another minute. And by the time you get there, and they're also adjusting it as you go along as they're
They
getting
are.
real-time data.
It's so
I was really
clever.
intrigued. So today, I take a left to get onto the M4 faster. It saves about 10 minutes. And for some reason, that road was closed today, and Google Maps hadn't picked it up yet.
Ooh.
So 4 of us were all obviously all following Google Maps, all trying to turn left. We go, oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Then we're all getting each
Yeah,
other's
yeah,
way
yeah,
as
yeah.
we're turning around in the car park and heading
Yeah.
out again.
Yeah.
And-
And I thought, I wonder how long it's going to take Google Maps to figure out that this
Well,
is closed.
one thing they never figure out is the neighbourhood area in Marston Ferry. And everyone in Marston Ferry, I'm really sorry, it's not my fault. I know we're not meant to drive through, that it's for residents only, but Google Maps is sending us all there.